Welcome back, brothers and sisters. I am Braden. This is Langley Outdoors Academy, and thank you for stopping by. All right, guys, I listened to your feedback, I did my research, and I have a new mic. So, for you guys who have been with me for a while, I need you to tell me, how is the audio sound? I hope it's to your liking because it makes this more important when we do everything right. So, thanks for the feedback. Let's dive into the content for the night. All right, so guys, tonight, we're going to talk about that ATF task force that Biden put together with DOJ Attorney General Merrick Garland. You know, that whole little chestnut that we covered? Well, it's not working out, and the left is losing patience. And I'm going to be honest, I don't really blame the left for losing patience because earlier on when this was declared, we all kind of talked about the fact that this doesn't really seem like it's going to have an outcome. It kind of seems like it's just for show. It's kind of looking like that. Now, fair warning, the video that we're going to talk about tonight is inspired by the tragic events that happened in Chicago where the two police officers were attacked. Now, unfortunately, one of them was flat out murdered doing her job. Okay, that's a tragedy. My thoughts and prayers are with that family. That tears me up because no one should have to go through that, and they shouldn't have to go through that. But the fact is, that's the world they live in, and that sucks, and it doesn't have to be that way. Now, that's what you're going to hear. You're going to hear the name. You're going to hear a lot of that stuff. But this is spawning a very important conversation that I want to know what you guys think below. I've got everything lined out. There are tons of articles for sources in the description box below. But let me know what you guys think in the comments field, because this one is kind of nuanced. And it's important for us to discuss this because this has merit. So with that intro out of the way, let's get into this. So the first thing we're going to do is kind of set this up, and we're going to talk about Dick Durbin. Now, keep in mind, Dick Durbin is the senator from Illinois. He's been there forever. He's number 2, right behind Chuck Schumer from New York. Okay. Article title: Durbin. Murder of CPD officer Ella French shows need to boost punishment of gun straw purchasers. In a letter to Attorney General Merrick Garland, Durbin wrote, "The straw purchase that led to Officer French's death is a call to action for the Justice Department strike force." Okay? And this is where he's going to kind of go into his diatribe at the straw purchases, which is a piece of the argument. And that's, if you remember, that's what Biden was diving into, was the guns trafficking. Remember, he said in a news conference, if you're trafficking, we're coming for you. He was very aggressive in that. But listen to, first of all, what a straw purchase is so we're all on the same page. Straw purchasers use their clean criminal records to buy guns and illegally put them in the hands of people who are not supposed to have them. Now, law or not like for the law, against the law, I'm not saying either of those things. You guys can leave it in the comments field. What I'm saying is decisions have consequences. And if you know someone has a potential to use a firearm in a negative manner, that's not a good decision to give them a firearm, whether it's the law or not the law. It's very similar to someone who you know is in a struggling mental place, not helping them if they have firearms. It's kind of in the same world, right? It's decisions have consequences. And that's why self-reliance and self-respect is so important, okay? So here's what Durbin said, all right? In a Senate floor speech Tuesday, this Tuesday, Senator Dick Durbin, Illinois, said the murder of Chicago police officer Ella French with a weapon bought in Indiana adds urgency for Congress to increase the punishment of so-called straw purchasers and make it more than a paperwork crime. Now, what he's talking about now is now adding more legislation onto the floor. If you recall, where we're sitting currently is H.R. 8 and 1446 are stalled, and they were both background checks. You remember the Charleston loophole, you remember all that stuff, universal background checks. That's what the whole thing was for the first part of this year. Here's the next thing he said, and this is where it kind of gets a little sticky for the left. For years, I've been fighting to toughen our laws against straw purchases, Durbin said. Right now, straw purchasing is treated, listen to this, as a federal paperwork violation for lying on a federal gun purchase form. Charges are rarely brought, and when they are, sentences are often just a matter of months, and that needs to change. Now, here's my first question right off the bat. If you have been fighting for this for so long, and you're number 2 in the Senate, and you're really close with Chucky Schumer, number 1, why has this never been passed or even any emphasis? Because I remember a lot from Dick Durbin and Schumer all about universal background checks and a vote. A vote is what we need. It's exactly what Schumer said. By the way, neither one has happened on H.R. 8 or 1446 because they know they don't have it. So why has there not been legislation based around straw purchases? That's the first question that you ask. And this is interesting because this is where it starts to fall apart, like I said. You can do task forces all day long, but here's what happened where they actually make legislation. Durbin, the chair of the Senate Judiciary Committee with Senators Patrick Leahy, Democrat Vermont, and Senator Susan Collins, Republican of Maine, bipartisan, in April introduced the Stop Illegal Trafficking in Firearms Act of 2021, which boosts penalties if there is a reasonable cause to suspect the person the straw purchaser is handing off the weapon to will use it in a crime. Punishment could go as high as 25 years in prison for a straw purchaser whose weapon ends up being used in a violent crime. Now, keep in mind April. What happened in April? In April, Biden came out and issued his 5 executive actions. We cover that on this channel. And he also nominated David Chipman to the position of director of ATF, which is still floundering in the Senate. It hasn't been confirmed. I haven't heard one thing about this bill. It was put forward in the Senate. I wonder why, because if this is the main problem, and he's been fighting for it for years, and there's task forces to fight gun trafficking in Chicago, Los Angeles, New York, Washington, D.C., and what is that other one? I think it was San Francisco. Why was that never brought up? And that's where it falls apart, because it's a paper tiger. And that's what I'm thinking these ATF things are. All right? Here's the actual bill for anybody who was paying attention to this time, because I'll be honest, I didn't hear about this because this was never even brought up to my attention. All the emphasis was on 8 and 1446. Senate Bill 878, Stop Illegal Trafficking in Firearms Act of 2021. This came out in March, not April, by the way. It never made it out of committee. Well, that's interesting. How could it never make it out of committee if this was a big issue? So that's where they're starting to get in trouble. This is where the tragic events in Chicago start to unravel, by the way. On Monday, federal prosecutors filed criminal charges against Jamal Danzi, 29, of Hammond, who allegedly acted as the so-called straw purchaser of the handgun used in the weekend shooting. Again, tragically, of those officers. The Indiana man is being held in federal custody pending a detention hearing set for Wednesday. He is charged with conspiracy to violate federal firearms laws. Okay, so that's all federal prosecutors. And this is why they're starting to get irritated at the task force. On July 22nd, we covered it on this channel. Garland came to Chicago to announce the formation of strike forces to crack down on gun trafficking and straw purchases, which is interesting because that's the bill that never even made it out of committee we just talked about, 878, the Senate bill. Bipartisan. We love that, right? During that visit, Garland identified Indiana as a main hub for these straw purchases. Shortly after that, a federal judge handed down an 8-month prison sentence in what the feds called a case study in the problem. Federal prosecutors say Eric Blackman, a man with no criminal history, bought a 9mm Smith & Wesson pistol for someone who was underage in August of 2019 from a licensed firearm dealer in Oak Forest. Prosecutors said that gun was ultimately linked to a December 22, 2019 mass shooting on the South Side, injuring 13 people in the South May Street. So on the same time, this guy got 8 months for that. Okay? And here is where the entire world is really kind of up in arms. And honestly, I understand the perspective. Federal judge orders release of man charged with straw purchase of gun allegedly used to kill Officer Ella French. Set free. It gets a little bit worse from their perspective. A judge ordered the release Wednesday of the Indiana man, so this was Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, charged by the feds with acting as the so-called straw purchaser of the gun that killed Chicago police officer Ella French and drew ire from the city's top cop. Gilbert, who is the U.S. judge, this is not a localized judge, this is a U.S. judge working in conjunction with the U.S. prosecutors in the federal ATF Joint Task Force with the CPD. We've covered this. This is not a local matter. Okay, this is the whole thing. This is who they're going after and how they're going to do it. Listen to what happened. Gilbert then agreed to release Danzi, 29, on terms that included a $4,500 unsecured bond, supervision by court personnel, and a warning to have no contact with Eric Morgan, who has been charged along with his brother in state court in connection with French's death. So he gets to go free, and you don't have to pay $500 until later on. So he's out the door. And that is what brought this from the top cop in Chicago. To say that I'm extremely disappointed in U.S. Magistrate Judge Jeffrey Gilbert's decision to release Jamal Danzi on an unsecured bond today is an understatement. Brown said in a written statement, it is an outrage. And that's where we're at right now. If I were to put this in a tiny little nutshell, all compact and easy, right? You've been spending all your energy on the federal congressional level, Dick Durbin, and other Democrats on gun control on H.R. 8 and 1446. You spent all your capital on that. Nothing happened. It basically paralyzed. Meanwhile, Biden comes out, puts together executive actions, puts out not David Chipman for nominee for the ATF director, and then he comes out after that and establishes a DOJ ATF task force going forward into those 5 cities I mentioned earlier, working with the Chicago Police Department or local police departments, ATF, federal prosecutors, and local prosecutors. And this is what happened from the left perspective. It's starting to sound like this is a paper tiger because they're not going to be able to do the things that they have promised, which is leading the left to be very dismayed and losing confidence in the entire plan, specifically Biden's words on it. He was very tough. He was very tough talk, but nothing's happening because the federal penalties and consequences are not matched up by law from what he's saying. You can put as many task force together as you want, but if you're saying that all these terrible events occurred and it's trafficking, but then when you finally catch the traffickers, they get 8 months in prison or they get 4 months in prison and the maximum is 5 years. You can understand why this is nothing more than a paper tiger to say I'm doing something, but they're doing nothing. And that's the content for tonight's video. Let me know what you guys think. Once again, thoughts and prayers to the family of the slain officers. Until tomorrow, I'm Braden. See you later.